The end of 2023 is here, and this is my last movie review for 2023, and I'm glad I got to end it on this movie, The Zone of Interest, a movie that I had heard so much about when it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival back in May. This has just kind of been like the critical darling for just a few months now, and for the most part, this film's still not in wide release. If you're in some of the major cities, you can still see it. I got the chance to see this movie, and my gosh, I can't wait to talk about The Zone of Interest, which is a movie I was apprehensive of sharing my thoughts with originally when I heard the premise of this movie. And I was like, is this really a movie that, one, I want to talk about in any extent? And two, is this even a movie I really want to see? I was pretty conflicted on The Zone of Interest just on a broad basis of it. And I should say the reason that I was is because I am Jewish. I have Jewish heritage. And while my family was not in the Holocaust, we were not located in Germany or Europe at the time. This is obviously a story that hits close to home with, my heritage. And thus, when I heard the premise of The Zone of Interest was this family who are Nazis living next to the concentration camp, which I believe in this film is Auschwitz, that was a premise that automatically, one, filled me with dread, and two, just a level of discomfort that I wasn't really sure how I wanted to engage with The Zone of Interest going forward. With that also said, that I'm not like necessarily a Jonathan Glazer diehard fan. There's certainly a lot of his films that I respect. I would kind of characterize him as his style isn't always in my taste. Thus, like I said, going into Zone of Interest, I had some apprehension. And then after seeing this movie, I can gladly say that this movie alleviated all of my worries going into it, because I think this is a pretty staggering piece of art that Jonathan Glazer made with The Zone of Interest. And let's just kind of start off with the bat, which, again, I'm going to be reviewing this film, but I am also going to be showing some of my, again, heritage here, my Jewishness, I guess, if you will, which is not necessarily something that I've talked about pretty publicly on this channel, but I've just felt like it was so relevant for this review. And the element, like I said, walking into this movie, which I already described, what I took away with it while watching this movie was just pure horror and just dread and just disgust watching this movie. It's very effective in what it is displaying, it is displaying is systematically killing the Jewish people. That's what this movie explores. How men and women were not only complicit, but were just, the banality of evil is a term that I've heard thrown around a lot with The Zone of Interest. And the element that I found so uncomfortable was with this main character, whose his character's name is Rudolf. He's played by Christian Friedel, a very talented actor in this movie. But the aspect of this movie that really made me uncomfortable with this performance is this guy does basically the same job that I do for my county job, which is he's assigned a task. It feels very bureaucratic. He is essentially just trying to get through his day, get home, advance, get higher pay raises. And he's also like kind of tasked with just like streamlining. It kind of feels like this guy would work at an office if this was now. And that's what a lot of this movie is exploring, that this guy isn't anything inherently evil per se. And obviously that's not me condoning anything that is done in this movie, which is all horrific, but just that I think going into the movie, I had an idea of how I thought the Nazis were going to be portrayed in this movie. And I think that idea was going to be, they were these loud, outwardly racist, just all this hate and bigotry in their heart, and that they so believe that they're doing this for the good of their country. They're just blinded by loyalty to Hitler, blinded by hatred and partisan ideology, that when this guy doesn't ever really refer to any of that, there isn't really any discussion of Nazism ideas in this movie. There's a few lines thrown here and there, but that's not what drives these characters. What drives these characters is it seems to just be a stable job. That's really what it felt like was driving this husband character. And that made it all the more horrifying to me. Just that he's kind of not even vile in his actions. He doesn't, like I said, he doesn't have any outward hate that we see displayed. He doesn't have any rage moments against Jewish people. Rather, it's just like, I got to do my task. Like this is just what I do. It's the indifference of it. It's the indifference of destroying, killing lives with such ease that horrified me watching it. Like, I've always heard that term, banality of evil. I was a history major in college. I understand all of these concepts. To see it laid out for me, to view it, was a different emotional experience that was horrifying to watch. Like, just truly disgusting. I felt vile watching it. This film is so well done in the way that it feels like a documentary where everything just kind of feels like you're just watching these characters go through their days, because nothing really happens in the movie. Like, this movie is really about this character, Rudolf, just trying to basically get a promotion that allows him to work the comfort of which he wants to work. So he wants to work closer to Auschwitz so he can be with his family and not be away. And that's really the driving force of this movie. And that movie isn't even really about this. Like, that's not really even what this movie is about. It's a subplot in it, but this movie is really just existing in this world. It really is the classic example of there is what the movie is telling us this movie is about, and there's also what the movie is showing us what this movie is about. And those are two distinctly different things in this movie, because half of this movie is really a workplace drama and a family drama. What the actual movie is showing us is this movie is about the indifference to destruction and how people can justify what they are doing and committing heinous acts with just complete disconnect. Like, that is really, I think, the best word to describe both the husband and wife in this movie. They're just so disconnected from the reality of death, even though death is literally right next door. And I don't say that like figuratively. Their house shares a wall with Auschwitz in this movie. And one of the incredible designs that Jonathan Glazer does in this movie, and it's just such a unsettling thing that permeates across the movie, is the sound. The sound of this movie is just so creepy because we're right next door to Auschwitz. And so we constantly hear background noise, and it's never in the forefront. It's just the white noise of this movie, whether it's the trains, whether it's screams coming from the camp, and everyone just ignores it like it's just a normal everyday thing. And it's so creepy when you get to moments where, because this is a family that we're following in the zone of interest, when you just see the kids, they're the kids who are growing up next to Auschwitz. They're the German kids of the soldiers. They're just growing up and they're just existing in this world. Like, they're just playing in the, in their sandbox, and like in the background, and it's not at the forefront. You just see it. You just see smoke rising up because clearly Jewish people are being burned 20 feet away. We're never inside Auschwitz. We're never inside the concentration camps. We're around them. We're next to them. Maybe we're in an office in Auschwitz. I think is one or two scenes implied that maybe we are in the walls, but we don't see Jewish people in this movie. We don't see the furnaces. We don't see these destruction. We don't see the genocide. Actually, we don't see it with our eyes. But it's so present there. And there's this one scene in this movie, and I'm trying to be careful with spoilers, but it's very fascinating when other characters come into this orbit and how they then react to something that they're not used to, where all these other characters exist and it's become normal. They become desensitized. Another character can move who shares the same opinions, and yet being so close to it and not being used to it, they start freaking out. Now, there is some direction in this movie that I don't even know if I necessarily agreed with every beat that is hit by Jonathan Glazer in there. There are some very strong scenes of artistic liberties done with the direction, I think you could say. There's one scene in particular that happens in the middle of the film. I don't know if this choice or style worked for me completely, but it is very jarring and it is very abrasive, and it kind of kept me locked in, and it was just trying to reveal something more to this movie. So that's why I'm like really impressed with the Zone of Interest, because even if I don't know if everything within this movie worked perfectly for me, the craftsmanship within it and what it is trying to communicate, and that feeling and that sense of dread that you have from all of these moments, work in such wonders that I was left with a movie that shook me to my core, that disgusted me, that left me feeling nauseous. That was a word that I described when I tweeted my thoughts about this movie. This movie had me nauseous at multiple times because I was just so disgusted by what I was seeing. And yet it's so provocative and it's so powerful. And I just highly suggest people seek out this movie. It's not going to be for everyone because there really isn't an emotional core of this movie per se. The emotional core is the existence within this life and the psychological damage that it's doing to you, the viewer. But it's not like there's any like remorse of this film. This is a very remorseless film in what it is portraying, and it ends on just such a high note, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the final 5 minutes of this film make me believe that this movie elevates itself from great to just one of the best of the year. And I can comfortably say The Zone of Interest is one of the best movies to come out in 2023 and is well worth your time. On a scale of 5 stars, I am comfortable giving it 4 out of 5 stars here on my channel. So thank you all for watching this review of The Zone of Interest. If you like this video, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and follow this channel. I'll be back tomorrow, Sunday, December 31st, talking about my worst of the year list. And then I'll be back Tuesday talking about my top 10 best films of 2023.